Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins are heading into Week 6 of the NFL season with a mix of quiet confidence and cautious optimism, as quarterback Tua Tagovailoa looks set to start against the Los Angeles Chargers despite battling through a pair of nagging injuries. It's the kind of storyline that's become almost synonymous with Tua's young NFL career. Moments of brilliance tempered by questions about durability, resilience, and how long he can sustain his rhythm in the relentless grind of an NFL season. Still, as things stand, all signs point to Tua being under center this Sunday, and that's a relief for Dolphins fans who know just how different this offense looks when their signal caller is on the field. During his press conference on Thursday, offensive coordinator Frank Smith struck a tone that was both reassuring and realistic. He didn't downplay the situation, but he made it clear that the team isn't losing sleep over Tua's health status. "We're working through the process to Sunday," Smith said, sounding calm and measured, the way coaches do when they know the media storm is swirling but don't want to feed into it. We're not anticipating any setback for him for playing on Sunday." That line, "not anticipating any setback," is what every Dolphins fan wanted to hear. Tua may have been limited in practice on Wednesday because of discomfort in his hip and thumb, but the team seems convinced it's precautionary more than anything else. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The mention of Tua's hip immediately brings back memories of the injury that ended his 2024 season. That right hip that's been a storyline ever since his college days at Alabama. It's one of those injuries that never truly fades from the public consciousness, especially for a quarterback whose game depends so much on balance, torque, and fluid motion in the pocket. When Smith was asked if this current issue involved the same hip, he hesitated, admitting he wasn't sure. That uncertainty might sound minor, but for fans who follow every word coming out of Dolphins camp, it's enough to raise a few eyebrows. Still, Smith was quick to clarify that there's no major concern at this time, emphasizing that these things are part of playing football, especially at quarterback, where hits are inevitable. And that's true. Tua's been through a lot since he entered the league. He's endured concussions, rib injuries, finger issues, and that infamous hip surgery that nearly derailed his entire career before it even began. Yet, time after time, he's fought back, proving that toughness comes in many forms. He's not the biggest guy in the league, not the flashiest, but his poise and accuracy have been cornerstones of Miami's offense. When he's on, the Dolphins' passing game hums with a rhythm that's hard to stop. That's why, even with a sore hip and a tender thumb, the team's confidence in his availability for Sunday feels well-placed. Smith, who's known for being pragmatic rather than overly optimistic, went on to downplay any talk of throwing limitations. "Both of them are just parts of. I think when you're playing quarterback, there's contact that comes," he said, leaving no hint of panic in his tone. "But ultimately, we're working through and not really anticipating anything as far as Sunday hindering his performance." Those are reassuring words, especially since thumb injuries can be tricky for quarterbacks. The grip on the football, the spin on the release, even a small tweak can have ripple effects on timing and velocity. But so far, Miami's camp insists Tua is good to go. When pressed about how the thumb injury even happened, Smith admitted he wasn't entirely sure. "I can't remember exactly how it was, but yeah. Ultimately, he's working through stuff for the week, and we're not overall concerned for Sunday," he said. That kind of vagueness is pretty standard coach speak during the season. The Dolphins aren't going to hand over every detail, especially not when they're preparing to face a Chargers defense that would love to exploit any sign of weakness in their quarterback. Still, hearing that the team isn't concerned about Tua's ability to throw is the biggest takeaway from the entire presser. Looking back at last Sunday's game, a 27-24 loss to the Carolina Panthers, it's worth noting that Tua took 3 sacks. There's been no confirmation on whether one of those hits aggravated the hip or thumb, or if something happened during Wednesday's practice. But those hits are always a reminder of how fragile the margin for error is in this league. Quarterbacks are constantly balancing aggression with self-preservation, and Tua, in particular, has had to learn that lesson the hard way. He's been sacked 13 times already this season, and while the Dolphins' offensive line has shown flashes of improvement, it's still not the impenetrable wall Miami fans would like to see. Protecting Tua has to remain the top priority, especially against a Chargers team that can bring pressure from multiple angles. Now, let's talk about the psychological angle for a second. Every athlete deals with pain, but for quarterbacks, there's a mental aspect that can't be ignored. When your body isn't at 100%, every throw, every drop back, every push off your plant leg feels just a little different. It takes confidence and repetition to block that out. The good news? Tua's demeanor doesn't suggest he's rattled. After practice Wednesday, he spoke to the media like he always does. Calm, composed, and even cracking a few smiles. That's usually a good sign. If things were truly bad, the Dolphins would have shut him down, and there's no way they'd have him fielding questions if the situation were dire. What's really at stake here is more than just a regular season game. The Dolphins are in a pivotal stretch of their schedule. Sitting in the thick of the AFC playoff race, they can't afford to slip. Every game counts, and having their starting quarterback on the field, even at 90%, is infinitely better than turning to a backup. The offense runs through Tua's rhythm, his quick decision-making, his chemistry with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, his ability to diagnose defenses pre-snap and adjust on the fly. It's that rhythm that makes the Dolphins scheme so hard to defend, and it's exactly why his health is the heartbeat of this franchise. It's also worth remembering that this matchup against the Chargers carries some extra intrigue. These two teams have been linked ever since the 2020 NFL Draft, when Miami selected Tua 5th overall and the Chargers took Justin Herbert right after him at 6th. Ever since then, every Dolphins-Chargers game has felt like a referendum on that decision. Herbert's arm strength and prototypical frame have drawn comparisons to some of the greats, while Tua's accuracy and leadership have defined his own unique path. This week's game is another chapter in that ongoing narrative, and it just wouldn't feel the same without Tua on the field. For Frank Smith and head coach Mike McDaniel, managing Tua's workload this week is all about balance. You don't want to push too hard in practice and risk aggravating the injuries, but you also need to keep him sharp, especially with how much timing matters in Miami's offense. Expect to see him limited again in practice through Friday, with most of the reps going to ensure his comfort and rhythm rather than volume. The Dolphins staff has been careful with player health all season, using advanced tracking and load management tools to monitor fatigue and stress levels. It's a modern approach that's become necessary in today's NFL, where a single setback can derail months of progress. The fan base, of course, remains cautiously optimistic. Social media lit up after reports of Tua being limited at practice, but once Smith's comments circulated, the tone shifted from concern to confidence. It's become clear that this isn't an injury crisis, more like a maintenance situation for a quarterback who's taken a few hits and is feeling the toll of a long season. And let's be honest, if you're still playing football in October and you don't have something sore, you're probably not playing hard enough. There's also something to be said about how Tua has evolved as a professional. Earlier in his career, he might have been more visibly affected by the noise, the endless debates about his arm strength, his ceiling, his injury history. But this version of Tua feels different. He's focused, resilient, and seems to have found that quiet confidence that separates good players from great ones. Even in the loss to Carolina, he made several throws that reminded everyone why Miami built this offense around him. He's more than just a game manager. He's the rhythm setter, the tone setter, and the emotional leader of this team. So as Week 6 approaches, the storyline isn't whether Tua will play. It's how close to full strength he'll be and whether he can continue to elevate this Dolphins team in the face of adversity. If history is any guide, he'll rise to the occasion. He's done it before, and the team believes he'll do it again. Miami's offense, when firing on all cylinders, is one of the most explosive in the league. If Tua's thumb and hip hold up, Sunday's matchup against the Chargers could be another high-scoring showdown that reminds everyone why the Dolphins are one of the most entertaining teams in football right now. Injuries are part of the game, but how players respond to them often defines their careers. For Tua Tagovailoa, this week isn't just about battling soreness. It's about continuing to prove that he can withstand the grind, lead his team, and keep Miami's playoff hopes alive. The Dolphins have seen enough of him to know that his toughness can't be measured by physical stats alone. He's earned the respect of his teammates, his coaches, and even his critics. And when Sunday comes, hip bruise, thumb soreness, or not, Tua Tagovailoa will be out there, doing what he does best, leading the Miami Dolphins with poise, precision, and a whole lot of heart. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? In what can only be described as one of the most shocking developments in recent NFL history, Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel has reportedly submitted his resignation, sending tremors through the league and leaving fans, players, and analysts alike in a state of disbelief. The news first surfaced late last night, creating an immediate storm of speculation, social media frenzy, and an avalanche of what-ifs as people scrambled to understand what could possibly drive a young, promising coach to step away from one of the most coveted positions in professional football. For a coach who had been widely praised for his innovative offensive schemes, his calm yet determined leadership style, and his ability to extract peak performance from both veteran stars and raw rookie talent, McDaniel's decision seems almost unfathomable, prompting a torrent of questions about what may have transpired behind closed doors in the Dolphins organization. Sources close to the team suggest that the resignation was not a sudden decision made on impulse, but rather the culmination of weeks, if not months, of internal frustration. There are whispers of mounting tension between McDaniel and the front office, disagreements over roster construction, and differing philosophies regarding player utilization and long-term team strategy. While McDaniel's offensive acumen has never been in question, the murmurs indicate that the disagreements may have extended beyond X's and O's, touching on fundamental issues of leadership, accountability, and the very culture of the Dolphins organization. These rumors have sparked an intense debate across sports media platforms, with pundits dissecting every tweet, post, and cryptic comment from players and team insiders for clues about the real story behind this stunning move. The impact of this resignation cannot be overstated. Miami Dolphins fans, who have endured years of inconsistency and heartbreak, had pinched themselves when McDaniel was hired, believing they finally had a coach capable of bringing stability, innovation, and a legitimate shot at playoff success. Over the past seasons, McDaniel had transformed the Dolphins into a team that could compete with the league's best, blending a disciplined running game with inventive passing concepts that leveraged the strengths of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. The synergy between McDaniel and his young quarterback had become one of the league's most talked-about storylines, praised for its precision, creativity, and the apparent trust and rapport that had developed between the two. Now, all of that effort, all of that carefully cultivated momentum, risks being thrown into uncertainty as the Dolphins are forced to navigate an unexpected coaching vacuum just as the offseason ramps up and roster decisions loom. Industry insiders have also pointed to the broader implications of McDaniel's departure for the NFL landscape as a whole. In a league where stability is prized and coaching changes are closely scrutinized, losing a visionary like McDaniel sends shockwaves not just in Miami, but across all 32 teams. There is already speculation about which franchises might emerge as suitors should McDaniel become available on the open market, though some insiders caution that the circumstances surrounding his resignation may complicate any potential moves. The optics of leaving a team in the middle of a building phase could raise eyebrows, but others argue that McDaniel's reputation as a strategic genius and player developer is strong enough to make him a hot commodity, especially among teams struggling to find a balance between veteran leadership and young talent. Meanwhile, the Dolphins are suddenly thrust into a high-stakes search for a replacement, with rumors swirling about potential internal promotions, interviews with high-profile coordinators from rival teams, and even speculation about more unconventional choices that could signal a bold, new direction for the franchise. Fans have taken to social media in droves, blending disbelief, frustration, and outright speculation. Some argue that McDaniel was pushed out, citing perceived interference from the front office or a lack of control over key decisions, while others defend his choice as a courageous step toward preserving his principles and personal integrity. Memes and threads proliferate, analyzing his past press conferences for hints of dissatisfaction, dissecting his body language during games, and even revisiting past interviews for any indication that McDaniel might be quietly preparing for an exit. Meanwhile, former players and NFL analysts have weighed in, with some praising McDaniel's courage in stepping away from a high-pressure role on his own terms, while others lament the sudden loss of stability for a team that had seemed poised for real progress in the coming seasons. The collective reaction is reminiscent of other headline-grabbing exits in NFL history, where a single decision has ignited months of analysis, debate, and speculation. Within the Dolphins organization, the immediate priority is reportedly damage control and reassurance. Team sources have indicated that there is a sense of urgency in communicating with players to maintain morale and focus, particularly with the off-season workouts approaching and contract negotiations underway. The ripple effects of McDaniel's departure could extend to free agent acquisitions, draft strategy, and the development trajectory of key players, especially the young core that had begun to embrace McDaniel's offensive system. Analysts are already pondering how a new coaching philosophy, possibly dramatically different from McDaniel's approach, might impact Tua Tagovailoa's progression and the team's overall identity. Could the Dolphins pivot toward a more conservative game plan, or might they opt for a radical overhaul, bringing in someone with a contrasting vision and leaving the roster to adapt once again? The uncertainty is palpable, and the NFL community is watching closely, knowing that every decision from this point forward could define the franchise's trajectory for years to come. Speculation also extends to the timing of McDaniel's resignation. Some insiders have suggested that the move was strategic, possibly intended to allow him flexibility in considering future opportunities without being constrained by contractual obligations or public perception. Others wonder if off-field factors played a role, including personal considerations, family priorities, or a desire for a change of pace after the intense scrutiny and demands that come with leading an NFL team. Whatever the motivations, the fact remains that the announcement has left a void, both in leadership and in narrative, prompting sports media outlets to scramble for insights, interviews, and expert commentary to fill the sudden gap. The stories emerging from this saga are likely to dominate headlines and sports talk shows for weeks, with analysts revisiting game tapes, roster moves, and even the smallest interactions in practice sessions in a bid to understand the broader context. As the NFL continues to reel from this bombshell, the long-term consequences for both McDaniel and the Dolphins remain uncertain. While some envision him resurfacing with a contender or perhaps taking a sabbatical to recharge and refine his strategies, others see the resignation as a cautionary tale about the challenges coaches face in balancing personal principles, professional ambition, and organizational dynamics. For the Dolphins, the next steps are equally fraught with risk and opportunity. Whoever steps into McDaniel's shoes will inherit a roster brimming with talent, but also a fragile momentum that must be carefully managed to avoid disruption. The stakes are high, and every decision, from the interim leadership to the eventual permanent hire, will be scrutinized not just for its tactical implications, but also for its psychological impact on players, staff, and a fan base desperate for consistency and progress. In short, the resignation of Mike McDaniel is more than just a headline. It is a seismic event in the NFL, one that underscores the delicate balance between talent, leadership, and organizational alignment. It is a story that will unfold over months, perhaps even years, as analysts, insiders, and fans attempt to piece together the motivations, consequences, and hidden narratives that led to this stunning exit. The Dolphins, and indeed the entire league, have entered uncharted territory, and the conversations sparked by this resignation will dominate locker rooms, newsrooms, and social media feeds alike. For now, the focus remains on understanding the full story behind McDaniel's departure, anticipating the Dolphins' next move, and reflecting on the unpredictable, dramatic, and often merciless world of professional football, where even the brightest stars and most promising leaders can find themselves facing the unanticipated twists of fate that define the sport. The rumor mill is spinning, speculation is rampant, and one thing is certain. The NFL landscape will not be the same, and every fan, player, and analyst will be watching closely as this story continues to unfold. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.